and welcome to episode 15 of Franc Talking. I'm delighted to be joined by Anne Boleyn of Lumar, who is the Senior Tech SEO and Lead Product Specialist at the company. Anne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And yeah, you're lucky to be the first person that I'm talking to that I've never actually met before. So we will see how this discussion goes. But
I hope we're friends at the end.
Yeah, I'm sure we will be. And thank you so much for making the time. Did you want to just have a quick intro into yourself, Anne, your journey to Lumar and kind of the work that you do now?
I've been at Lumar now for 3.5 years, which feels like a lifetime.
Yeah.
I am lucky to bridge two teams. I am a professional services consultant. So that means I am a technical SEO on loan to our enterprise clients, helping them make use of and set up the tool, get insights out of it. And then I also wear a product strategy hat. So using my lens as a power user of the tool and as an erstwhile in-house technical SEO to help guide new features that are in development to resonate with our market.
Amazing stuff. So we're very lucky to have you like today. And I think covering those areas of technical SEO, the evolution of tech SEO over time, how kind of the work that you've done previously, how you kind of assist clients with the amazing tool suite that Lumar offers, and also like what the future holds for the company and also for the world of technical SEO. So yeah, really looking forward to jumping in with you on this.
I'm always really keen to meet other Lumar fans.
Great stuff. So in terms of getting into tech SEO, and did you want to just have a quick intro, like in terms of your journey and the brands that you worked for previously, and yeah, kind of how you've got to where you are now?
So absolutely. So I like to start talking about my journey to SEO from my liberal arts background. I come from a family of scientists. My mom's a scientist. My dad, brother, and grandfather are engineers. So I grew up in a family that valued intellectual curiosity and ambition. I went the social sciences route, though, sort of an outlier from a family of hard scientists, mathematicians. And so my undergraduate degree is in psychology and my graduate degree is in international relations. But I'm lucky because both those degrees included rigorous training in research methods and statistical analysis. And at the same time, they are grounded in how people work both alone and in groups. And I think that those two things together is the secret sauce of SEO.
Yeah.
So I was trained up to be effective in this particular role. The journey into conversion rate optimization, digital marketing analytics, and then ultimately technical SEO was one of sort of being in the right place at the right time and getting some good breaks. There were a few pivotal moments that really shaped my opportunity to get where I am today, where I feel that I am really uniquely suited and have the right skill set to do technical SEO for a SaaS company. So I started out as a data analyst and a communication strategist doing speech writing, report editing, peer-reviewed research methodology, things like that. And I was very randomly asked to edit a Dreamweaver site. And I know that's going to date me, and that's okay, because I think...
Yeah, no, I'm fully aware of Dreamweaver, yeah.
And, you know, it was an eye-opening moment for me because I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't worried about breaking it. I knew how to teach myself how to use it. And I noticed how that differentiated me from others who felt nervous around communication software. So that led to a few years later, I was tasked with managing a web application redevelopment. And I didn't know going in that this was going to be such a life-changing moment. But that was when I had my first taste of what goes on in engineering and the strategies and mechanisms that corporations have evolved in order to liaise between the business and engineering. The UAT process, the Scrum, Agile, all of that. And it really suited my personality. These sort of Scrum-based, we're going to do just this, we're going to focus on these outcomes, these are the resources we have, very pragmatic approach, less of a, how would you say, sometimes the way that business gets done is less strategic or less optimized. And in in the engineering space, it is very regimented, and that really suited my personality. And then the final break came a few years later when I was working in an SEO role and Core Web Vitals was announced. I was working in a product-led SEO role. So now, again, working to my strength, interfacing with engineers, putting tickets together, helping defend those tickets, explaining the rationale behind them, weighing out the various approaches we could take and how they met our engineering capacity and strengths. And Core Web Vitals was announced, and I got the opportunity to lead that work stream. And so that meant I had to quickly scale up my learning in web performance optimization. And I really loved it. It was an opportunity for me to learn at a level I hadn't understood before what is underneath how websites function, and not just how they function and how they're built and all the people that are involved in those decisions to get them to the point where they're so poorly performing, but the relationships that need to be built in order to reverse that.
Sure.
Web performance optimization is this really lovely marriage of science and people.
And that's a fantastic overview in terms of your background and how you've got to this stage now. And I think what will be extremely useful, given my experience with SEO and working with engineers, it is that communication between both teams and kind of that mutual respect for understanding what each is trying to achieve and kind of adhering to those kind of guardrails as well that are put in. So I'd love to jump in and chat with you on like what are the common kind of issues that you might see between SEOs and engineers, because considering you're very much positioned as a bridge between the two, and you kind of understand both worlds. What are the kind of issues that SEOs face with engineers, and also vice versa from the engineer world to SEOs?
I love that question. The way I'm thinking of approaching my answer is to think about what has regularly worked for me to build a relationship and gain trust from an engineering team. So I think that there is hesitation on the part of engineers because of a legacy of receiving somewhat ambiguous requests. That don't demonstrate a knowledge of how things work. What has worked for me in building relationship with developers is referencing resources from the sites that they also reference, right? So demonstrating that we're speaking the same language, and then showcasing my data savviness. So when I can pull a dashboard from New Relic and say, I saw this episode, I looked into the data that's underpinning it, I understand that this is the particular file that's causing the issues in these conditions, right? And then that opens the dialogue. It's much more effective than saying, you know, here's the chart, what is, you know, we had an interruption on this day, tell me what happened, right? I'm showing that I have an understanding of how to drill down to the root cause. So I think that that's the common language between SEOs and developers is data, root cause analysis, and impact analysis. And it has to be very data-driven and rigorous, and it can't be fluffy.
100%, yeah, and I think that's totally fair. And I guess that's the thing is if there's a JIRA ticket that's submitted, you want to make sure that there's enough information in there so that the engineer is fully aware of what the issue is, what the impact is, rather than we need to improve our LCP to go off and do something, right? And have that very fluffy response.
That's a really good example. Yes, that is.
Yeah, I've done, maybe because I've done that a few times.
Make this thing happen. Yeah. No, that's really true. I have had to get better at writing JIRA tickets over the years, though. I tend to be really verbose, and I like a lot of context. And I've learned that developers can work with a lot less context. They're much more focused.
Yeah, I've been accused of writing War and Peace emails and JIRA tickets, so I think it's a good tip for all round to be to the point, and but also be very data driven with it. And we will get into to the functionality of Lumar as well, because you also enabling AI, utilizing AI, should I say, to create JIRA tickets that will plug straight into the development system. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that functionality, or start at the top?
Let's given it's this the exchange is about working with engineers.
So this is a relatively new feature that's been really popular. The general pain point behind AI generated tickets was the difficulty that our clients, our SEO stakeholders, were having in getting fixes implemented because they were often putting insufficient detail and guidance into their tickets. All right, so you'd see examples of tickets that were a few sentences long, average response time spiked on this day, find out why and fix it. And those would struggle to get picked up, right? So what we did is did some pre-training on, we were using Llama at the time, to put in some fundamental instructions about what goes into a quality JIRA ticket and how to examine the data points that are available from the crawl to build a data-driven case for the impact of the issue and what the fix should look like, so that our users can have the beginning, you know, as all AI generated content, it should still be reviewed by a human before handoff, but a really useful wireframe of the beginning of a JIRA ticket that would actually get picked up.
For those who are interested in this, I will put a link in the newsletter to it. I can say it is very impressive, and it does cut a lot of time. And I guess you're seeing a lot of uptick from clients as well in terms of usage.
Folks are really excited about it because there is a certain cadre of our users who are intimidated by that whole process, talking to and working with engineers, and this helps bridge that gap. And it's building relationships so that on both sides, folks are gaining confidence.
I think that's a really good point. I think it is about that relationship building and that respect to understand and to have, like you say, if the confidence isn't there to then talk the language of engineers and developers, then this can be a tool that really helps to kind of build that confidence up and improves your kind of knowledge. I loved you were saying earlier in terms of your journey about especially being intellectually curious, and I feel like from my side as well that I think that's a big driver for, like, you don't just turn up and do stuff and then you get paid and then you go home and then that's it. You want to go and find out more things. You want to go in and develop like yourself in so many different ways. And I feel that this type of thing can help you upskill and get more knowledge within a particular kind of sector.
I think that is a trait that is shared by the most effective technical SEOs, is a curiosity to understand how these slightly obscured systems, complex systems, work. And also the satisfaction of figuring out what lever to pull and seeing it work.
Great stuff, Anne. So yes, I really want to drill into your technical SEO experience and your background with everything that you've seen. And so over the years, we've had accelerated mobile pages, core web vitals, as you referenced earlier, canonical tags introduced in 2009, hreflang. So you have all of this that has evolved over time. But in 2025, I'm very keen because I'm, as you know, been an SEO like extreme advocate for having a very robust, very efficient framework that you can obviously build a brand in terms of a website or mobile app on top of. But in 2025, how do you sell the importance of tech SEO to a CMO or to a head of digital, especially when everyone's head is turned by AI and generative AI in terms of what you can do with content, with video? How do you sell in the importance of technical SEO in 2025?
I think that the fundamental selling point will always be infrastructure costs. It costs a lot to build and maintain in baseline operation levels an enterprise scale website.
Yep. Yeah.
Enterprise teams, whether you're, wherever you are in the digital marketing stack, are having to fight for resources to implement on blue sky creative ideas, whether it's launching a new section, a new feature, AI-powered chatbot add-on, whatever it is you want to tack onto your website that you think is going to be effective. You have to fight for resources among a slim team that is working mostly to keep it working as is. Technical SEO gives visibility into where those, it gives a manner of visibility into where some of those expenses can be cut.
Sure.
And into ways that the underlying code can be refactored to be more efficient so that new things you want to develop on top of it can be developed more quickly.
I've always found, like, when I've been in-house at a brand or at an agency, and this is probably the same, obviously SEO has changed significantly over the last, I guess it's 20 years now, near enough, that I've been in. But you still have to have that robust framework that you're built on top of. And I feel that for using the likes of Lumar, you can then check to see obviously if there's broken links, if there's poor UX pages, if there's thin content, if loads of no indexes have been added to a different section. So I feel that having that visibility over like all of these key elements, and it can be a lot to keep on top of, like, as you know,
Yeah.
like if you've got like cross-referencing canonical tags that don't exist, or hreflang when the set isn't complete. So all of these things, which we'll go into as well in terms of what Lumar can do, and also with kind of your clients. But yeah, I generally feel like there's if you're investing in content, which you 100% should be, what's the point of having a very, very slow, poor performing, poor discovery website with like average response time? It just feels like you're completely missing a trick as a brand. And last thing I would say is, like, with reading, obviously, with how like Larry Page would be everything was on speed and everything was on about how quickly can Google do something. And I think back in this was a session I had with John Earnshaw a couple of weeks ago from PyData Metrics. And we were talking about when Marissa Mayer launched, I think it was Google Instant, or it was called at the time, or Google Suggest, I can't, but it was all about speed. How can you preempt what somebody's going to be searching for? And I also think that applies to the website as well, that how quickly and how great a customer experience can you give to someone if they are waiting for content to appear, if they're trying to find something. And this is where obviously the importance of UX comes into SEO. So yeah, like I still think from my side, from what I see, like it's one of the first things if I speak with clients, that you have to invest in your technical setup and not to forget that whilst looking at what AI is doing as well, which is kind of what everyone cares about at the moment. So
this is such a rich topic, and I want to take it in a number of directions, but something that's resonating for me right now is thinking about why healthy technical SEO is important to the things that CMOs might want to do with AI. I'm working with a company really interested in making sure that their technical product documentation is comprehensible to the likes of ChatGPT, and running into issues with the way that their documents are formatted. They're heavily reliant on PDFs, and their data tables are visually formatted in a way that makes them difficult to be understood by machines. And so here we go, where there is a direct interaction between technical SEO health and the renderability of data and the goals that the organization has around their data being accurate and AI. So I think you'll always find those intersections. Really interesting to have a conversation about how SEO has changed over 20 years. I think in the last 3 or 4 years, there's been this acceleration where expertise has become that much more siloed, because each specific domain, there's so much changing, whether it's the tooling, whether it's the capabilities, the policies, particularly with Google. I'm thinking about all of the changes that are happening with Google Ads, with the switch to dynamic, etc., that many folks have had to specialize in one sliver of it. And so that makes a CMO's job of connecting the dots and figuring out how each of these pieces are going to work together, and will they harm each other if we take a certain tact in one arena, that much more complex. And I think that's the role of the CMO, is to have experts in each of those marketing slivers that they can talk to, that keep them apprised of how there are intersections, right? I think as a technical SEO, my responsibility is not only to know how the field is changing with regard to Google algorithms and Google's ability to render, and what are the user agents that are calling my site, but also to understand at a surface level how those other slivers of the marketing pie are changing and how that impacts what I'm doing in my realm. Another thing that's really changed just in the last year or so is that the algorithm itself has become more complex. We know that Google has changed over to using machine learning in the primary search algorithm, and that means that the outcomes of a core algorithm update are less predictable, and they make a little bit less sense. I mean, we've seen statements coming out, whether it was through the mandated disclosures and the ongoing antitrust trial with the DOJ, and other public speeches, where Google leaders have admitted that the algorithm has become harder for them to understand, less predictable, right? So that complexity.
For me with algorithms, and this is where I think earlier days, like people would try and game the algorithms. People still do, right? And it would always be about how can you understand, like literally to predict and like to understand what was going to happen, right? And I think very soon as I like joined when I started, like it wasn't always about football. It was never about that, right? You need to know when a core update is being rolled out. You need to know when there's a spam update. You need to know when there's a helpful content update, how to interpret that, and then you can see whether that's something you technically you should really, if you know what you're doing and you have a broad view in terms of stuff and you're not just fixated on certain things, you should be doing all great stuff for your users anyway, right? And it's easy to say, but that's the kind of
The gold
ethos.
standard, yeah, but there are all kinds of cottage industries that have popped up around exploiting the way that the algorithm is working, whose models sort of tend to explode overnight
Yeah,
with these core algorithm updates, right? And they'll really want to understand exactly how can we regame the system.
yeah,
But you're
yeah.
right, that doesn't affect every brand.
You will see when somebody spins up a site or if they're doing like affiliate SEO, um,
Hmm.
and you see that kind of in the gambling casino kind of space as well. But I think if you are like a large brand that, and it can be complex to, as an SEO or a digital marketeer, to navigate through a huge corporation. But essentially, you should have, I guess, obviously looking at your above the line, your brand strength, all of these other kind of signals that will help to make that authority and make you kind of prominent within the space. Like there shouldn't really be a need to try and game the system for certain things. And it's always difficult if you're under pressure, you have to hit KPIs and you're seeing a competitor that is uh, like doing something dodgy or buying links, old school, like then it's very easy to go, well, why can't we do it? Why don't we do it? Um, so yeah, it's I totally agree with you that it has become a lot more complex, even in the last kind of 18 months. Anyway, it's not like a transactional thing. You've never been there to guarantee. I'm going to guarantee that you're going to get organic visibility, and it's going to result in traffic. It's going to result in conversions. At the end of the day, that is the job of the SEO. But nobody knew of AI overviews like 3 years ago. Then all of a sudden, that's introduced into the SERP. That has a knock on in terms of CTR. So yeah, I think it's about evolving as well and adapting to see what's going on. Very data driven. This is what's happening. This is what we think we need to do as a next step, and these are where we think we can go. But yeah, I'm in total agreement with you on that.
It's possible that we're entering the golden age of technical SEO. If you think about how much more attention folks are paying to AI bot crawling
Yeah,
activity and AI bot rendering capabilities, along with sort of C-suite interest in figuring out how to do something with AI because that's the shiny new thing and because that
yeah,
really resonates with shareholders. There is this general interest in, how are apps like ChatGPT representing our brand, how accurately, how likely is ChatGPT to send us traffic, right? And along with that, there's these larger conversations about what are the crawling and rendering capabilities of AI bots and how do they differ from what we've come to count on, which is actually quite advanced capabilities of Googlebot.
yeah,
And what does that mean fundamentally for how we've built our websites? So I think there is this level of technical SEO expertise. I don't know if you've been paying a lot of attention to predictions around how AI will fundamentally change the tech economy in the next few years. But there are predictions that sort of resonate with me, which is there will be a hollowing out of the middle, that there will be plenty of lucrative roles for senior, very advanced practitioners
yeah,
and low paying roles for entry level workers, but a hollowing out of the middle. And I think that that's absolutely going to be true about technical SEO too, because there will always be this need for that human component to interpret, to understand, to contextualize, to understand the history, right? And to speak to how crawler bot capabilities are changing. And
Yeah.
so I think there will always be this role, if not a more visible role for technical SEOs, and that CMOs need to have one in their pocket.
Definitely, 100%. And I think, no, you're very right. And I think Kalana are a good example, more for the broader use of AI in terms of how they've made savings across the board. They've cut out certain entry-level jobs, and like I said, it's kind of hollow in that middle. And I think you will see a lot more of that. And I think the important is, I think for a lot of stuff in digital marketing, it's not necessarily AI will take your job, but somebody that knows how to use AI could do. And I think that's always going to be a threat. But that's going back to the curiosity and the evolution to make sure that you're constantly making sure that you're up to speed with stuff and not standing still. So Lumar, one of the most popular SEO tools out there. I've been a fan and a user for many years. I think from an enterprise crawling solution, it is like second to none. I use it for many clients and have recommended over the years. But in terms of people that might not be familiar with Lumar, how would you kind of position it within the market and the benefits that it brings?
So at its base, Lumar is an enterprise scale crawling tool with a technical SEO focus. So what does that mean? I like to think of Lumar as a data warehousing solution, so that you are externalizing the cost and the effort of data processing and longer term storage for retroactive reviews and comparisons.
Yeah.
So it is particularly useful for larger websites that are older, more complex, or have a complexity, whether they're using, introducing new web development strategies that are becoming more popular, like Shadow DOM, or they're patching together multiple external sources of JavaScript to build a personalized page. The more complex the implementation of the website, the more useful it is to have a visibility platform. And a web visibility platform can serve two primary purposes for a business. One is sort of auditing, seeing the current status of your website. You listed earlier sort of a number of the metrics that we evaluate a website against, looking for ways that there could be improvements to the effectiveness of an SEO strategy. And one of the ways that Lumar helps in that auditing capacity is to try and separate the signal from the noise, especially as you get into the larger websites. There's always going to be things that are broken, that are sort of, we know they're broken and we're going to plan on letting them stay broken. And how do you distinguish from that the things that are broken in a way that is hampering our strategy actively and needs to be reworked in order to unlock growth? So there's that auditing capacity, right? You start in with the platform, you get it configured to work for your site, and then you get a sense of, all right, where are our largest weaknesses?
Yeah.
And then the other aspect is the ongoing monitoring. If something suddenly changes, right? Working on a very large e-commerce website that all of a sudden had a super spike in JavaScript redirects. Turns out that the tool that they've started working with a new vendor to inject personalized, related clothing items.
Yeah.
As this unexpected JavaScript redirect behavior, which is adding significant index float. And the team who's purchasing and implementing that solution doesn't have visibility into the kind of impacts it could have, because they're focused on merchandising and
Yeah,
selling. They don't have visibility into the impacts that could have on crawlability and indexability. The SEO team goes to IT, says, "Did you release anything recently?" They didn't, right? So then we can even see, well, was this injected through GTM, right? So it is a platform that allows you to catch when something has changed and then understand what the cause of that change was and track it down, and then build those relationships so that regressions are less likely to happen in the future.
100%. That's a really interesting example, and I'm keen to find out. Is it a daily crawl, weekly crawl that they do in terms of finding this out, and how obviously that's alerting very quickly to the incident, and were they, when they discovered what it was, were they able to use like Lumar data to make the case to change this?
Yeah, so in terms of crawl cadence, you have the option, depending on the size of the site, to crawl through the entirety of your property once a month, let's say, right? And then to segment out more important pages or a representative sample of pages to crawl more frequently, right? And you kind of need a combination of both, because with the full site scan, which will take longer, it's more resource intensive, right? You're going to understand the scale, the magnitude of the impact of the change. And then with the smaller visibility crawls that you're running more frequently, you're going to capture the change sooner. So you know the date of the change. That helps you track down what the cause was,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you're not going to know the scale of the issue. How large is the impact, right? So you want a combination of both. In terms of using the finding that something has broken and turning that into a fix, I find that proximity to the change increases the likelihood of a resolution, right? If you
right.
think about this, the sprint just ended, and within a number of hours or days, we say there was an accidental outcome. The likelihood they'll scramble back and fix it because they
Yeah,
still have in
rollback.
mind what they were doing, right?
Yeah,
Is higher. If we wait weeks or months and then we say there was an outcome, then it has to go into the regular queue.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So act quickly based upon the changes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that increases the likelihood of a remedy.
Yeah, perfect. And that's great. That's a really good use case. And in terms of the kind of requests that you get asked by SEOs to work with you, and the kind of the main reports that are used, are there any that you can call out that gets the questions that get asked the most, or the reports that you see that have the most engagement?
I think that some of the strongest use cases and the way that a web visibility tool like Lumar gains stakeholders across the organization are things like web replatforming or migrations, or menu redesigns, or intensive internal linking overhauls, right? These large resource intensive efforts to redesign or overhaul a site or migrate it, where even non-SEO stakeholders are aware that there is a risk
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
want to mitigate that risk, right? So that's often where we get our toehold. And those are very popular reports looking at crawl depth,
yeah,
internal linking strength, and mapping that against, what pages are really performing well on what types of search surfaces, and what could our patterns of internal linking or our general site structure be doing what could we do? How could we manipulate those things to unlock growth for the pages that we want that have transactional value?
yeah. Great. And what would you say is the most underutilized feature that Lumar has that you're like, this is such a great tool for a tech SEO. This is something that should be used, but you feel that isn't utilized as much as it could be?
That's a really good question. Probably log files.
Log file analysis. Yeah, I had a
Mhm.
question on that, so I was quite keen to get your thoughts on that as well. So you can, I think you've got an integration where you can integrate the log files automatically, or you can do a manual drop. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so log file analysis gives real-time insights into how the site is being crawled and lets you see sort of where is the mess, where is the distraction, and what are some of the mechanisms that we can use, whether it's cleaning up the way we've coded our templates, whether it's enhancing our robots.txt disallow rules to alleviate the distracting crawl paths to the noise so that there is overall more attention to the parts of our website we want performing. So there's that aspect of it. Now, crawl stats is another source of sampled log file data for one, user agent or set of user agents from Google. And even that's often neglected.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
setting aside that Lumar has the capability to ingest and host and analyze your log files from an AWS bucket, and integrate that into a crawl and see at what depth of your site the crawl activity is focused, or on what page types is crawl activity focused. There is information that's freely available on crawl sets, and I find that that's an area that is often neglected. And I think it's because it's intimidating.
Yeah. 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 And for those that are unaware, so that's in Google Search Console under settings. Then you can have crawl stats. Yeah.
Mhm. So that is data that I'm often mining for clients to help them tell stories. If there is a sudden spike in average response time, the
Yeah.
crawl stats report in Google Search Console can tell us which user agent type, which HTTP response type, which file type is this isolated to. And again, that's a useful diagnostic so that as you're handing something over to the dev for research or resolution, you can be specific.
Yeah.
Our average response time spiked because our 301 redirect handling latency went up, right?
Yeah.
As one example. So log file analysis or crawl stats is something that I think is really useful in telling stories, both in positive and negative directions, because after a new menu redesign is launched, after a new internal linking component is launched, log files are going to give you the earliest possible indicator of whether that's been effective.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
executives love to hear stories immediately.
Yeah.
Often we have to say, well, it's going to take 6 weeks minimum till we start to see this play out in organic traffic, right? Something like log files can give you an indicator that it's been effective much sooner.
Yeah. Perfect. No, that's great insight. And the Lumar platform itself. So you've set up as like analyze, impact. Did you want to talk through some of the different options that you have in Lumar and kind of what they do?
Yeah, so I primarily work within the analyze and monitor components of the application. Lumar has a suite of capabilities for website health monitoring and auditing. So analyze sort of what we call our bread and butter fundamental crawler. That's the capabilities we were talking about earlier with sort of the one-time snapshot auditing and then the regression monitoring and causal analysis. And then impact and monitor are different ways to slice and dice that data for visual reporting. So impact is based on our proprietary metrics, which we call health scores. So what all of this bubbles up to is that digital marketers and SEO teams are running thin and probably have multiple pieces of SEO software that they have access to. And while I can spend every day, every hour of every day, if I wanted to, becoming a power user of Lumar, they don't have the luxury to do that. They need their SEO software to work for them, right? So where we've been working to advance, and I think what's a trend that's happening in the SEO tooling space is how to tell stories from that data visually. So that a user can spend less time digging and exporting and filtering and trying to understand what the data says, and more time moving into action. So the within Lumar, impact and monitor are two ways to do that. Impact is our health scores. So health scores aggregate the hundreds of metrics that are collected on each URL and the site as a whole when it's crawled, and group them into impact areas like user experience, crawlability, indexability, availability, and then weigh them within the metrics in each particular health score, depending on the number of URLs or resources affected and the impact weighting. There is a overall score, which will give you a quick visual of how your website is faring and the areas that need effort. And that's something that has been really effective to move up into the C-suite, to the CMO level in particular, when we're talking about resourcing and prioritization, because it's a summary visual metric. That's impact. And then monitor, that's dashboard. So we were talking earlier about how you don't want to just have one full site-wide crawl that you run quarterly or monthly. You want to have other more regular crawls. And there are certain aspects of a site that you're maybe more interested in that are more critical. So even at the full site level, when the crawl completes, you really want to know, how did this affect my product pages, right? Or how did this affect the pages that I monetize? How did it affect my product demo pages? Whatever it is that are the monetizing pages for your property, you'll want to have those segmented out. So this is a dashboard that allows you to visualize multiple crawls at the same time, and the segments of that crawl that you're interested in, and see sort of a chart so that you can very quickly identify where there are outliers. And it's a sense-making tool, right? So that's really where I think not just Lumar, but many SEO tools are investing now, because we've gotten really good at efficiently collecting data, but it is making sense of that data.
100%. Yeah. I totally agree. And I that is such a great feature that I find when I like jump into it, is the fact you can check previous crawls, and then, like you say, you can have them like side by side in terms of a dashboard, because there's so many times where you go, for instance, like there might be a visibility drop and you go, right, that they added a no index here, or like, do you know what I mean? So as an example, and you can literally pinpoint when that happened. But I think more importantly as well is that mistakes happen, right? I think everyone has a horror story of dev leaving on a no index tag when they've done a new website redesign. But but it's just about learning about what can be done in the future to prevent that from happening. And I always find that is, rather than it's not a pointing fingers, but it's just so that everyone is aware what the impact is by doing this for the next time. And I think that's a crucial part for the SEO role as well, is to ensure that you're constantly like educating and updating other teams that why would they know if that's an issue or not?
Yeah, it really does happen way more than you think it should.
You should do, yeah. Very, very true. Good stuff. So yeah, we'll jump. That's great. So have you still got time, Anne, or have you got other things?
I've got another 15. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Let's go on to the enterprise, working at a SaaS company, and then just very quickly, if you're happy to do it, just in terms of leadership, women in tech as well. Just love to get
love to.
your input on that. But cool. So great stuff. We've gone through obviously what a fantastic tool Lumar is, that can be used at all levels of a marketing team, right from the SEO up to the CMO, and then also horizontally within the business for the engineering team. But I'd love just to get you, what's it like working at Lumar, kind of an enterprise SaaS company, like your day to day, and also very keen to your kind of product side as well, where like you're constantly looking at what can be improved, enhanced, if there's a change in terms of schema, or Google have rolled something else out, and then how you can integrate that within the platform. Yeah, just love just to get your thoughts in terms of how it is to work at Lumar.
Well, the challenge of moving from an in-house SEO role to professional services or product role at a SaaS company is that you lose your strength in working with the full range of tools that are out there, right? Because you are now laser focused on being the best user possible for a single tool. So I do feel a little bit like some of my generalist SEO skills have atrophied as I've become so specialized in understanding how this tool works and contributing to making this tool work better. Another aspect I think that's challenging about working as an SEO at a SaaS company is that you have to be at the front lines of learning how new features work. I think a lot about a couple of roles ago when I had the luxury of being an in-house SEO with budget for multiple tools, and we had engaged customer success managers whose job it was to show up weekly or monthly and show us, these are the new features. I've enabled them on your account. Here's what you can get out of them, right? Now, in addition to my full-time role of actively consulting, finding insights, helping unlock growth for my clients, I have to be the first one to learn how each new feature works. And so figuring out how to juggle that has been interesting, but I love it. I love being an early adopter. So
sorry, Anne, go on, you go.
That's the nature of being an SEO at a SaaS company. That's the slight flavor difference.
No, most definitely. And for your role, given your clients, like, we're not going to go into revenue, that'd be a crucial part, I presume, but what metrics do you look at when like assessing, obviously there's SEO metrics, but inside Lumar, what are the kind of success metrics that you kind of work towards?
So a big one for us is renewal, right? The length of contract and whether there are upsells within the duration of the contract. That's a big measure of success. Another one is the number of stakeholders involved. So I know that my accounts are getting value and unlocking growth when the number of folks who shows up to the call or who asks for a seat in the tool goes up.
Yeah,
right?
Okay.
So similar to that, we will be looking at number of active users, time and platform, how much customization they're putting into their setup, how many of the new features we've released they've adopted as an indicator of fit between our tool and the enterprise. And then, of course, at the end of the day, what we really want to see is that we've unlocked growth, right? That they've acted on the intelligence available in the platform and started to build those relationships internally and figure out how to advocate for the resources to make the kinds of changes that are going to unlock the growth that we think is possible.
Perfect. Great stuff. I think that's fantastic. So we'll finish off then. We'll talk through women in tech, like crucial topic. Given as well, we won't put this in, but I'm just saying from my experience working with engineers being like quite a male dominated environment, and like you do see it, like the last couple of startups I've worked with or been at, a lot more female engineers coming to the front, which is great, which needs to be done. So I just want to talk through in terms of how you've seen change as well. So great stuff. And so, like, as a senior leader in the technical field, what challenges have you faced as a woman within technical SEO, and have you seen improvements over time for that?
I think this is a tough and personal question for sure. I think I've probably faced a usual amount of difficulty in carving my way to where I am today. Some things that have been working in my favor is that I'm very confident, and I think that makes a big difference. I believe that I deserve a place at the table.
Yeah.
I think that the effort that I have put into figuring out how to speak the language of engineers has paid off, because as soon as I figured out how to start making allies, I wasn't fighting battles uphill. I was being invited in.
Yeah.
So I think it's absolutely possible. I still spend a lot of time as the only woman in the room, but I know that there are spaces where women are helping each other level up and figure out how to gain the confidence and gain the skills so that they can follow in that path. I know that there are a lot of women who are hungry to figure out how to have a career in technology. And what I've noticed changing is that there is a lot more welcoming and public communities, a lot more public knowledge sharing, and both of those things have made it accessible for younger folks coming into our field to witness the kind of experimentation that can happen in SEO and the excitement that goes on at the edge of SEO where new knowledge is being created. And there's a lot of women who are contributing in that aspect, right?
Yeah.
So there's a sense of not being the only one and being part of an upswell.
Yeah.
It's been really exciting. And I do take a certain amount of pride in being the woman who opens folks' eyes to the fact that this skill set can reside
Yeah.
in places you might not have previously expected it. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, no, definitely. And so you raised so many good points there. And with young folks, as you say, coming into the industry, like you were talking about some communities. So I guess this is like LinkedIn or WhatsApp or things like that, where you can form part of that community. So if you drop afterwards, if you send me some of the links, I can put them into the newsletter as well for anyone interested in exploring and joining a bit further.
I'm happy to. I mean, as you know, I'm an active member of Women in Tech SEO. That is a community where I started out early in my career as a mentee, and now I serve as a mentor. And there are a number of communities now where I'm active in that are more public. And the benefit of participating in communities like that is I think that SEOs as a whole have become less private about sharing what's going on with their websites and are all digging in and saying, I'm seeing this, are you seeing this, right? Sharing and pooling what we're seeing helps us all become more effective. And communities are a place to do that. And I think you can't be a good SEO without being a part of those communities right now.
I think that's a super point, and I think that's just for all this. I remember being, I think as well, if you have something, I say your growth is slow, or you've experienced a drop, sometimes it could be a confidence issue where you don't want to share it with anyone else because you're worried about being judged. But if you are in a community where people understand like that there are indirect influences, there are people that you should try things, and sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. But I think it's being surrounded by that positive network and people that can also hold account and say like, I wouldn't have done it this way, but if you try this, so you can bounce off things with one another, and there isn't any like judgment. It's simply, I'm here to help and learn. So I don't think it's a great point that I think all SEOs can take from. Lovely. I think, like, to be honest, I think I could talk to you all day, Anne, but I think we will probably end it. I'll just do the ending now. And then yeah, I'll let you go. But thanks so much. So, okay, so and thank you so much for joining me today. I've learned so much in terms of Lumar, technical SEO, and in terms of your kind of vision and everything that can be achieved. Yeah, I just want to say thanks so much, and yeah, you're always welcome on the kind of the newsletter discussion anytime. So thanks so much, and I'll speak to you soon.
Andy. And I guess our prediction came true that we would end up friends at the end of it.
Indeed, yes, very much so. Thank you so much, though, Anne. Take care. I'll speak
Okay.
to you soon.